Walk into any major supermarket, and you are immediately bombarded by choice. Hundreds of brands and thousands of products sit on the shelves, all competing for your hard-earned dollars. It feels like a localized, competitive market. For most of us, economic reality is defined by immediate pain points. We track the price of eggs, watch local inflation rates, and wonder why paychecks are losing their reach. But those struggles at the checkout counter are symptoms of a quiet, massive shift in global ownership that occurred while the public was looking elsewhere. Hyper-focusing on local politics ignores the structural changes that make our diminishing purchasing power a predictable outcome of centralized control. The global ownership map has been quietly redrawn. While public attention remained on state-level policy, a silent consolidation reached across almost every major industry. The leverage once associated with public office now resides with an exclusive group of unseen corporate directors. If you want to understand how the global economy actually operates, you have to look at the people sitting in these seats. The average soft drink aisle contains dozens of options. Coke, Pepsi, and their subsidiaries sit side by side. These thousands of colorful brands spend millions on advertising to appear as fierce, independent rivals fighting for your loyalty. This aesthetic of competition makes it easy to assume companies are as diverse as their packaging, discouraging us from looking at the underlying financial data. This perceived independence is a profitable mirage, keeping the public unaware of how few entities are actually behind the products on the shelf. Tracing the ownership of recognizable consumer brands reveals a path that leads quickly to a handful of massive parent companies. If you trace the ownership of those parent companies further, the branches of the tree narrow even more. At the top of the global market, the same three institutional names appear as the top owners of almost every major publicly traded company on Earth. Following the financial trail shows that the market has become a closed loop, monitored and influenced by a three-headed oligopoly. These are the mega asset managers, known in the financial sector as the Big Three: Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock. They manage tens of trillions of dollars in wealth, a sum that exceeds the total economic output of entire nations. These firms operate as custodians rather than traditional owners of this capital. This pool of wealth consists of the 401ks, retirement savings, and pension funds of hundreds of millions of working people. The global dominance of the Big Three is built using the combined wealth of the very people who feel the squeeze of their market control. Their influence relies on a specific legal mechanism, the separation of financial investment from corporate voting rights. While the managers use their clients' money to buy corporate shares, the asset manager retains the voting power attached to those shares. This concentrated voting block allows executives to walk into almost any boardroom and dictate terms, from swaying board elections to forcing mergers. This reaches a point of absurdity when the same three entities hold the largest voting blocks in direct industry rivals, like United and Delta, simultaneously. This concentration of proxy power enables a model of capital accumulation that functions independently of consumer choice or market competition. With profits funneling into a centralized vacuum, the concept of a competitive free market has reached its practical limit. How does a small, centralized group dictate the entire economic board without actually using their own money to buy that power? The capital fueling this system is actually yours. It is composed of the collective weight of everyday savings, 401ks, and worker pensions. Asset managers intercept these millions of individual investments. They legally consolidate them into massive, unified blocks, which they then use to exert influence over the world's largest corporations. This leaves the middle class carrying the entirety of the financial risk, while having no say in how that capital is used. You are a passenger in your own investment vehicle. The mechanism behind this is a legal loophole called proxy voting. When you buy a fund, the asset manager, not you, retains the right to cast the votes for those shares. This diagram shows the market's concentration. Thousands of individual investor points funnel into three massive nodes, projecting dominant voting percentages over corporate boards. These firms hold voting blocks in supposed rivals, creating a connected web overseeing competitors in airlines, energy, and tech. This raises a logical problem for the consumer. A company has little reason to start a price war to win your business if its largest shareholders also own its primary competitor. When the same three voices sit at the head of every table in an industry, the structural incentive shifts away from competition and toward collective profit maximization. Retail prices continue to climb, even in sectors where global shipping costs and supply chain bottlenecks have returned to normal levels. In a healthy market, a company would lower its prices to steal customers from its rivals. But in a concentrated market, there is no reward for undercutting the competition. This chart compares the pricing of three rival firms. While the background line shows fluctuating market costs, these three columns rise in perfect lockstep, suggesting coordinated price hikes that the consumer cannot avoid. This transformation of the market turns the checkout counter into a tool for consistent wealth extraction, regardless of actual economic conditions. This area chart shows the result. Corporate profits expand upward in green, while real wages flatline, creating a widening gap in purchasing power. This gap neutralizes safety nets. When inflation outpaces interest, your savings yield becomes a negative number, losing value every month. At the same time, institutional capital is being used to buy up foundational assets. Large firms are now using their record profits to outbid middle-class families for single-family homes. This continuous siphoning of resources removes the financial autonomy required to exit the system, turning the middle class into a permanent, captive revenue stream. The 20th century strategy of working 40 years for a single employer and a geographic pension is no longer a viable path to security. The traditional financial path is a closed loop. It was built to keep your capital working for the institutions that manage it, rather than for you. Survival now requires seeking out asymmetric opportunities, moving your focus away from the public stock markets that the big three asset managers already dominate. To become unsqueezable, you must build income streams and hold assets that exist outside of the corporate boardrooms and their coordinated price controls. The first step in this shift is developing high-income digital skills. These are assets you own personally that cannot be easily offshored or automated by an institutional algorithm. Second, you must focus on lean, location-independent businesses. This decouples your earning potential from any single manipulated local economy. Finally, look at the difference between these two systems. The matrix on the left relies on centralized control. The fortress on the right relies on decentralized assets that cannot be inflated away or seized by a banking authority. You cannot outvote the monopolies in the boardroom, but you can build a personal economy that operates entirely outside of their jurisdiction. You can remain a compliant consumer funding your own extraction, or you can build an independent financial fortress while you still have the capital to do so. Subscribe to Capital Casualty and hit the notification bell. In our next video, we will break down the specific asset classes institutional money is secretly accumulating right now. Stay sharp.